You are listening to the B2B Marketing Mindset. We want to help demystify marketing to reduce risk, drive more and better opportunities, and grow your business.
All right, hey, we're back. This is Pete Monfre, your humble host. Let me bring that music down a little bit. It's episode 123 of the B2B Marketing Mindset. We're broadcasting live on LinkedIn and YouTube. I interview sales and marketing industry leaders, rogue disruptors, and people smarter than me to help you make better marketing and sales decisions. And man, I love that voice. Is his name Tim Neely? I can't remember his name, who played Jesus on Jesus Christ Superstar. We're playing What's the Buzz for our opening this morning. But today I'm talking to Michael Osha. That's why I paused. I'm like, oh, I love that guy's voice. Michael is the founder of SellMeThisPen.ai, and he's going to show us how companies are using AI in the sales process and whether or not Beelzebub's behind the entire thing, right? Which I'm suspicious. But first, real quick, if you're seeing this video live, do us a big favor. Hit like, comment, or share. That tells LinkedIn to share the video farther and wider. It also helps me feel good about myself because, say it together now, I just want to be liked. He's telling me the music is still going, but I already know that, so because I can hear it in my ear, and Michael can't. So let's bring him on. Hey, Michael, welcome to the program.
Hey, glad to be here, Pete. Thanks for having me.
We took a month off, so we're a little disoriented in terms of how all the buttons and the switches work and that sort of thing. But anyway, Michael's an international mystery man. He's helped a lot of very cool companies get a lot cooler, and he's an accomplished jazz musician, and everybody knows jazz is the devil's music. So welcome. Tell us a little bit about your journey and how you got to here.
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to. So, started as a musician. So we were talking, 15 years ago. And I had no idea about sales or tech, and I didn't want to get involved at all. So I was just enjoy playing music. And funny enough, I'm actually back to the city I started, Montreal, and something random happened. I started getting allergic reaction to my cat. Believe it or not, I had to put music aside. I was a singer, I was a vocalist, so I couldn't sing. I ended up a bunch of times at the hospital. So all right, I need to do some changes. I have to live, I have to pay the bills, right? Picked up a bunch of books and ended up in sales. So started selling door to door first, and my first tech sales gig was here in this city, Montreal, selling Microsoft solutions, Office 365, Azure to CTOs and executive. Well, having no idea how to do it. I had no idea about those buyer personas, no formal training whatsoever, and I started hating actually the corp culture, if you will. So got into startups, started a few startups myself, some successes, some failure, and my last effort before selling this pen was a company called Hopin. And Hopin at some point in time was called the fastest growing SaaS company in history. And as part of their founding sales team, obviously we had to do so many things. Building the initial playbook, help onboarding junior reps while selling and doing all sort of things, right? And I noticed a problem inside Hopin where we realized that because of the scale that we were working at and all the hirings that we did, we couldn't give coaching to reps. Training was almost non-existent. Manager one-on-ones, good luck. So I started selling me the spin inside Hopin, and then it's been almost 3 years and a half that we are running the company, and we're serving about 1,400 clients today.
Wow, amazing! And I love the name "Sell Me This Pen." That's so funny. So Michael, sell me this pen. Wait, again, I don't have. Sell me this pen, the cheapest pen in the world. I grab. No, do companies still ask that stupid question in 2025?
Some do, I guess, but it really depends on how you're asking it. I would say,
I've never had a job. I've been self-employed my entire adult life, and at
Good for
first
you.
as a musician for many
Yep.
years, and then when I was 30, I started this company. But that was in 1990. I guess I just gave away my age, but. If anybody asked me that at a job interview, I would just politely leave. Anyway, I digress. But What I wanted to ask you about right out of the gate here, and we'll talk about the solution you have a little bit, but I'm really curious about um, how companies are implementing AI in their sales methodologies because it's still pretty early stage. It's an early adopter industry still. Now you might not think so if looking at everything that's online, you'd think, oh my gosh, we're mature now. No, you're not.
Mhm.
In fact, I am a skeptic. I'm going to tell you that right off the bat. I have 19 years of Sandler sales training and practice. And so, but I'm real curious, what are they doing now?
That's a great question, and we can take it in so many different directions. I prefer to focus on what I know. So how we are actually serving companies and what business problems we are solving for in our specific clients. And let's talk about your, Sandler experience. So with Sandler, obviously the training is great. You cover great content, you give good training, but there were certain things that I would say were almost impossible to execute when it comes after classroom, let's say scenarios. When you're in the class, you can, train reps, have a conversation, teach them something new, they absorb it, but there's no guarantee that they actually apply it in real life, right? So when they go on field, without any practice or repetition, it's almost, guaranteed that they're going to practice on clients and burn leads, right? So one of the main implications or core functionalities that we offer is practice, role plays. So if you have real life buyer personas, then you can get to know a little bit better, learn about their day to day and what's top of mind for them, and then have a conversation, whether it's a cold call, it's a discovery, scenario, negotiation. You get used to those conversations. Not only you build confidence, but now second nature when you go on field and have this conversation with real people, you know how to act, you know how to have better conversations. So I want to ask you this question. With Sander, how did you guys ensure that the reps actually not only just understand what you're teaching them, but applying it in real life scenarios?
Well, great question. In fact, the way we did that is extensive role playing. In fact, role playing is really at the center of a lot of what we do, and then we go out in the field and we do it. And a lot of times we record those conversations and we debrief. We would do pre-call planning with our instructor. I mean, I do this now with the people that I coach. Where we'll prepare for the call if they've got an important sales call coming up. So help pre-call planning. Then they go off and they do the call. Sometimes I'll even sit in on the call, right? I'll be like,
Mhm.
this is my associate Pete, and then I just sit there. Um, and then we debrief afterward. But ton of role playing. And Sandler is difficult, right? This is a lot of people don't understand it very well because I mean it took me a good year to even understand the principles behind it, let alone to
Mhm.
adapt it for me personally. Like if you come out of the gate and you're just doing it like they teach you, it's not going to work well for you because you really have to internalize it. But role playing was a big part of that. So and I know that I've seen these tools, from elsewhere that are role playing AI agents. I think that's really interesting, actually. At first, I was kind of a skeptic, but depending on how you train the AI, that could be very good. But did I answer the question?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And the point is, role plays are powerful, but what we've seen, most teams actually don't offer it to the reps, believe it or not. And when they bring someone external, let's say we bring a standard, trainer, yes, during that period of time that you're with the company, you can role play, you can practice. But I'd like to use this sport analogy, and so many people might actually hate it, but AEs or sellers are, athletes, right? For at least our, sales organizations, they are the athletes. But the way they practice is very, I would say, event-based. So during this training, we give you a lot of role play. How about later, when you're not in the room? How about when marketing, ship new messaging? How about when we acquire a new company? What if we are a startup and we quickly, ship different functionalities? So reps need to practice to learn all these new scenarios. And what we notice is it's pretty much non-existent. And reps by themselves, if we say, hey, get in a group setting and let's just practice in front of your manager, they almost don't get even a chance to have a conversation because or one or two people might do it. Like you have a 30 minutes, 1 hour block. So it's almost impossible to make this practice a continuous process. So that's the problem we're trying to solve for companies that we work with. And there's some actual, impact that I can share if you're interested to understand like how people are actually, benefiting from this.
No, absolutely. We'll get to that. The Sandler classes are like 4 hours long, right? And so it's such a different model, but I do think that they're unique in this idea that it's constant reinforcement, coaching, practicing, studying. I mean, it's really hard actually. A lot of people just don't get through it. But if I look at, because I've read every sales book there is, I've had training in different methods and all that. But that it's almost like you go to a training session or a one of them Tony Robbins things, and everybody's fired up for about 3 days, and then they forget all of it, right? They go right back to their
Absolutely.
thing, and that's where I think your solution is super interesting. Where Sandler's costly. I mean, if you have 10, 15 salespeople, let's say, a small company, it's really pricey. Now, so I watched your Saul Goodman video. Like Saul's the client that you cold call. I do have some feedback on that for you. But it's interesting to me because it's scalable, right? And I assume that AI agent gets more and more sophisticated um, in terms of how it acts and are there dials like super skeptic? I mean, how does that work?
Great question. Look, initially when we started, when you saw that video is old and I'm lazy after recording the new platform and new functionalities. That's the area that I need help with. But long story short, that's the dream that all these bars keep getting better and better. And this is something that we just rolled out to a few clients only because, again, it's not a solid solution built and tested yet, and nobody's offering it this way. So typically, you build these bar personas based on the context you are giving about their day-to-day challenges. Yes, you can give them personality or even randomize all of that. But having context and a large scale, so those each one of these, let's say buyer persona, AI buyer personas get better during conversations, that's a hard task to do. But we're currently actually going through this process of building a way, or we call it the memory for each one of these agents, so they can get better and be more individualized based on each rep's strength and weaknesses. So next time they practice with the same buyer persona, that bar persona knows, how to challenge them.
Right. It's kind of like playing a video game where you're running that same level over and over and over and over and over again
Yep.
till you beat it. At some point, you're going to beat that AI. Now, but you're not going to if it stays the same,
Yep.
the AI has to grow, or maybe there's different levels of prospects. But I do think that the hardest part must be the randomization of, look, if you're doing cold calls, and I don't do many cold calls anymore because I don't have to. Now, if I had to, I would again. It doesn't scare me at all. I think it's kind of fun. I'm a freak. But there's this random aspect to it. You might get somebody who's having a super bad day, right? They're going to be
Yep.
really rude to you, right?
Hmm.
Or you're going to, there's this old saying, buyers are liars, right? And so you're always going to get people that, like, we develop our pain points so that if someone is being honest, one of those pain points at least is going to resonate with everybody you talk to, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
If they're being honest, right? Um, so I'm trying to put together in my head, how does the AI solution deal with that?
That's a great question. That's where customization comes to play. And that's pretty much how we differentiate compared to the rest of the pack in the industry by saying that, look, a perfect, for example, discovery or cold call only happens in a role play scenario because you give some context. AI has some ideas on how to run these calls, right? But to your point, in real life scenario, you might get someone who has a bad day, or they might gatekeep information, or conversation can go in so many different directions, right? So the
Right.
way we can actually mimic that scenario for a role play or a mock call scenario is by giving multiple layer of prompting, not only just a surface level, hey, this is a cold call, this is a VP of sales on a call with you, you challenge them with this and that objection, or even randomize it. At some point, as you said, reps learn how to beat the bot. And then they don't have respect for display because they're like, oh, I know how to do this. Why would I waste my time? But just imagine if you have layers of information based on actual call recordings of real clients, and you build this role plays based on each scenario reps are running in real life. So just imagine this is a sales call right now, and I get challenged based on an objection that you throw at me, or I don't get certain information that I need to understand about your buying process. So I'm most probably going to get ghosted. What happens if we build a role play based on this specific conversation for that specific rep? So that's how we are actually solving this problem, not only relying on mock calls that we build, although we customize and give more context based on company specific. Give me your call recordings. Let's talk about your success stories. Let's look at your competitors in the space, and then we can randomize the conversation based on that. But most importantly, we focus on real calls, real client conversations to build this role plays.
Interesting. So you could feed those call recordings, for example. We did an analysis on high-performing LinkedIn posts. We fed about 100 of them into AI and said, what's the pattern, right? And that was really interesting because it came up with a format that actually is pretty effective. Doesn't work every time though. The link, I think the algorithm keeps changing actually, but it's an ongoing process, isn't it? I mean, and we're going to talk a lot about role playing today, but there's some other pieces. But I want to ask you this. So one of the things that I see a lot is there is a so you and I are obviously big believers in role playing, right? But there's a lot of people are very resistant to that idea. You know, two-part question. Why do you think that is? And what can you tell them to get them on board with this? Because honestly, it is so powerful, but people are really like weird about it. Do you see that too, or is it just me? Maybe they're being weird about me, right? I don't know.
No, you're absolutely right. Look, we have to look at how we were running this role plays historically. So I would say typically companies, if they run this role plays, it's in a group setting or it's peer-to-peer. Let's talk about group setting first. A manager gets in a room with 10 reps, 15 reps, sometimes 20 reps, and that's another problem for another day to unpack. And then it says, guys, let's role play. So first and foremost, you don't have the safe environment for people to actually screw up. So as a rep, I know my manager might say, hey, this is very safe. We are all here a team. We are family. Let's just role play and make mistakes. It's weird. I want to get promoted. I don't want to look like shit in front of my peers. So that's the first problem. It's not a safe space. So reps don't like it because to me, this is a wrong way of challenging reps to build a skill set. Second problem is the context. It's the relevancy of those practices. So how do we do it? Either the manager becomes the buyer persona. I'm going to act as a CTO. I either challenge you, to the end of the world, like no other clients in real life. Then you're like, this is not how the real life, client conversations go. Or I'd be nice to you because I'm like, hey, I'm not going to ruin your, confidence level. So let's just have a normal conversation. That's different, right? The same thing happens in peer-to-peer. Just imagine if Pete, my colleague, and Michael gets on, hey, let's just do a role play together. So what do? First and foremost, you cannot act like a buyer. Most reps are not good buyers. They don't even understand their buyer personas. So the way you act as a CTO is never going to be the same as a real CTO. And also, we tend to be nice to each other. Hey, you're my colleague, you're my buddy. I'm not going to challenge you. And hopefully you don't challenge me, because if we are recording this conversation and sending it to my boss, nobody wants to look bad. So I would say these are the main problems, but also you have to look at it differently too. Like, do I have this continuity? Maybe in one role play I screwed up because I have a bad day and I'm a great rep. So if I screw up in front of everyone, then I'm going to be like, oh man, if I can skip these sessions for whatever the hell reason I can come up with, I would do it. So we get rid of all these problems because it's a safe space. It's in a one-on-one setting. It's based on my strengths and weaknesses. Maybe I'm great at objection handling. I struggle with closing. So let's just focus on that. That's why I introduced a coach. So a coach can help understand the areas of improvement and change behavior, not only play, because role play alone can build some behavior, but
Mhm.
does not necessarily change a behavior.
Yeah, and great points, by the way. And in fact, some that I've been doing this for so long, I forget a lot of the stuff. It's just intuitive for me now. But you're right. Somebody who's in a sales training capacity is probably not going to be able to role play as a buyer. Usually, what would happen in Sandler is the instructor would be that buyer, and they could
Yep.
dial it up and down, right? But there are people trained in buying, right? And so I think AI could probably, with some work, be that thing. But I do think that maybe that is the resistance. People are afraid of embarrassing themselves. At some point, I want to do a podcast of a sales call that I recorded and had transcribed, which was just an absolute train wreck. And I felt terrible for the guy. And I had to review it with him, and his boss insisted on sitting in, which normally I would not do that. But this guy
Yep.
would just not take no for an answer. Now, it worked out okay because the guy was actually like, he could see where he was going south, right? And he was open to change and he was okay with it. But I think it would have not been good for maybe someone else, right? Because it was that
Mhm.
bad. It was insane.
Yep.
And, I'll find that transcript and send it to you. You'll just be like, oh my God. Um,
Loves to
but
see it here.
but I was thinking about maybe we could do a role play on the podcast, a real short one, but I don't know if that's interesting to anyone. But I think that people need to get over this fear of it, right? Because this is really how you get good. Role play is the safe practice zone, and with a good instructor or a good coach, usually they're coaches. I don't even call them instructors anymore. Um, they can help you refine it because I think a lot of this selling business, it really comes down to practice, so that you get comfortable. Because I do remember way back when uh, I realized that I was going to have to be the person that was the salesperson, right? And at that time, and I built a multi-million, high seven-figure business without any sales training. And
Mhm.
so it was brutal. Like you could argue, well, objectively, it's working, right? But at what cost? Like it was destroying me as a person, just because of the grind of it, right? So when I discovered Sandler, it gave me some tools that made my life easier. But one of the biggest ones was all of a sudden I knew what to say. Like so, instead of calling up and stumbling through something and not
Yep.
knowing what I'm going to say, and then feeling the humiliation of that, and then knowing I have to do it again, and then the same thing happens again, and it was all that was missing is, I hate to use the word, a script. And as soon
Yep.
as you say script, people say, oh, I gotta sound like a robot, I gotta read
Mhm.
a script, da 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 da. No, you learn how to internalize it and you don't need it anymore, but it starts with a script, right? Like in fact, let's role play real quick, all right? So, but I was gonna be the buyer and make you to be salesman, but let's flip it for now. Let's see. You're the buyer and I'm the salesman, and I'm going to call you. This would be like a first call interaction, right? You never have
Sounds
heard of
good.
me before. It's totally cold. I'm calling you up, and we'll just start right now. Ring, ring.
Hey, who's this?
Oh, I'm sorry. I guess we're into the role play now. Um, Michael, this is Pete Monfre.
Kid,
It,
who are you with?
yeah, I figured you wouldn't recognize my name, but if you give me 30 seconds, I'll tell you why I called, and then you can decide if it makes sense to keep talking. Does that seem fair?
Sure,
And
shoot.
happy to share, all right, I appreciate that very much. I mean, but let me just make sure, is this a bad time?
No, no, that's fine. I
Okay,
can spare
awesome.
30.
Well, I own a very specialized consulting firm in Austin, Texas called Clarity Marketing Support, and we help companies in the blah blah industry, um, that basically have one of these three problems. They're not seeing enough new opportunities and they're frustrated, or they're seeing opportunities, but they're concerned that they're not the right opportunities. They don't fit their ideal client profile, or they're just struggling with getting a fee that matches what they feel like their value is. But I'm going to assume you don't have any of those problems.
Yeah, I mean, look, these are all great points, but we're all set.
All set. Okay. Well, listen, man, I appreciate you taking the call, and now that we're done, do you mind if I just have one more question, if that's okay?
Yeah,
If not,
absolutely, please.
so you're telling me that you have all the clients that you need. They're all the best clients that you could ever wish for, and you're getting paid at or near your value.
Yeah, I would say so. We're early stage company and we have very targeted ICP that we are working with. And our goal is not to necessarily expand massively at this point, but really sharp focus on serving some of our largest clients so we can build case studies. Then we might consider actually, bringing some external, forces to help us, spread the word and get more leads.
No, absolutely. Great. I appreciate you sharing that with me. And it sounds like it's more of a timing issue, not that you don't have the problem. It's just that maybe the objectives are different. And so it just sounds like it doesn't make sense right now to talk. And I appreciate it. I wish you a great day. Thanks for taking my call. Click.
I appreciate you. Have a good one. Great.
Right. So from your standpoint, what did I do? What did I do right? What did I
Great.
do wrong?
I would say let's just focus on the good first. First and foremost, I like permission-based opener. Many people don't like it, and that's fine. It works, for some people. I use it as well. What I liked about your approach, you started with the problem. Said, hey, these are the three problems you're solving, and it sounds like none of them is top of mind for you. And I like actually flipping it rather than saying, hey, which one is your problem? Because
Right.
nobody wants to admit that I have a problem, right? To someone that I don't know, you just called me out of the blue. What else? You show that you don't have commission breath. So when I said we are all set, instead of trying to overcome that objection, you basically, flip the script. Said, hey, it seems like you're set, but before I let you go, can I ask one more question? So you basically,
Permission again.
exactly. So you get another couple of seconds for me just to share and spit out some information. And then when I said about, because I felt comfortable, right? So I said, hey, this is the situation. I don't need it because of this, and that. So the most important thing is you got the right information. You got reality check. I could lie. People lie, right? I might actually lie just to get rid of you,
Right. I
but I
figured you
didn't
were
lie.
probably lying. Right.
So no, not necessarily. Like this is our current focus actually today. We are really trying to focus on large enterprises we are serving to build use cases, and then we're going to ramp up our outbound, for example, or marketing, efforts. So I think it was really on point. I wouldn't change anything about it, to be honest. It was
Wow,
a really good
I'm
call.
surprised because I'm super rusty. I almost couldn't even remember my pain points. I think I made up that last one on the fly. Here's what I would critique myself:
Yeah.
talking too fast, right? Didn't modulate my voice. So just to share with the audience, what I did at first is I said, "Hey, this is Pete Monfre," and then I shut up. I didn't say, "This is Pete Monfre with Clarity Marketing Support. How are you doing today?" Right? I used what's called a pattern interrupt. I know you know about it. I interrupted their thought process. So the prospect is thinking, Pete Monfre, Pete Monfre, Pete Monfre. Why have I heard that name? Now, if I've been doing a good job marketing, oh, they've heard the name, right? But they might not be able to place it. And I'm going to use that to my advantage. So while they're scrambling to figure out, they don't know it's a sales call because as soon as you say this pattern, hey, this is Pete Monfre with Clarity Marketing Support. All right, you just revealed you're a
I don't know.
salesperson. Their brain instantly goes, I need to get rid of this guy, right?
Mhm.
Then I said, do you mind? I asked permission and I said, give me 30 seconds. I'll tell you why I called. And then I'll give you, you can make the decision if you want to keep talking. I'm giving them control of the call. At least they think I am, right?
Mhm.
But I am. I mean, it's not manipulative. I literally am. They could say no. I'm like, okay, bye. But almost no one says no. And then I said, and then I'm using the pendulum effect a lot in that call. Like I said, is this a bad time? And I kind of clumsily did that. Usually it's a little smoother, but because if you go negative, people will tend to be positive. Is this a bad time? Will elicit, usually what they say is, it's always a bad time, but go ahead. If I say, is this a good time? They'll say no. And so, and even at the end, pendulum effect again, right? And so, and then I kept my focus on just trying to engage you in a conversation. And I did get some intelligence out of the call, right? You can bet I'm going to put that in my CRM, going to make a note to call you back in 6 months, and I'm going to reference what we talked about. So it takes a long time to learn that. and it takes a lot of practice, and I'm way out of practice, right? But to change my voice, like this is the way I talk normally. People accuse me of having, like, hey, you could. I had somebody say this to me. Pete, you could turn the radio voice off. It's just us now. This is my voice, man. What can I say? But when I make a sales call, I will modulate it, right? I'll say, hi, Michael, this is Pete Monfre. Sounds like my name doesn't ring a bell. Hey, no problem. Little hint of a laugh there. Hey, no problem. Sometimes I think I'm more famous than I am, right? Give me 27 seconds and I'll tell you why I called. And if you want to keep talking, then you let me know if that works for you. Is this a bad time? So what I'm doing is I'm sounding like a CEO, not a salesperson. And I am a CEO, right? And that's an advantage I think that founders have is you're not saying, hey, I work for XYZ company. You say, I own this company, right? And then I know exactly what I'm going to say next. In fact, I know exactly what I'm going to say for the next 3 interactions, actually. And so anyway, I digress, but I hope that's useful to the audience out there. Think about how you're making sales calls and how those things go and what you're struggling with. And if that resonates with you, let either Michael or me or know, and we're happy to help. So you mentioned that
Can I
your
add
video.
something to
Go
this?
ahead. Yeah, absolutely.
Can I, because that was really fascinating, and this is my point about what you've done there. You're experienced, you're confident, because you've done this for so long. It's like you playing that guitar. Even if you put it aside and you call yourself rusty, you still, when you get to the groove of it, you're confident. You can say it, you can play along. Whether you use all these, techniques or tactics where you're saying, hey, permission based or not, I'm sure if you pick up a phone and say even, hey, how's it going? It would work because you can hear that confidence and you know how to steer the conversation. The major problem that we are trying to solve for our audience is the fact that you need to get your reps to that confidence level, and they don't have it because they never actually practice it, especially if they're just new to the game.
Yeah, and I have to say, I have practiced a lot. And some of those little bitty ideas, like I had like I said, I read all the books. I mean, I had a pretty good understanding of what should be happening, and I was objectively successful in doing it. But it's those little pieces, like being willing to just say, hey, no, look, sounds like we're done. Thank you. I'm out of here. The other thing I do a lot is if I feel like I'm not a match, like I give them permission to say, look, if I'm not a match, I want you to tell me so right away, because I'm going to extend to you the same courtesy. That's my language, right? So I framed it as a courtesy to tell me no. Why would I do that? Because the biggest problem I had was endless following up with people who were never going to buy. So now I will qualify somebody in maybe 2 short meetings, because I have to have a second meeting so I can bring their decision makers in. And I say no a lot. I would say I say no 90% of the time, right? I don't know. Is that a normal
100%.
thing? Or am I a prick?
No. I think that's the best approach if you're a good, seller. You don't waste your time. You have limited time. You have limited real opportunities. Building a massive, pipeline on your CRM, but make, you look good in front of your managers for maybe 1 or 2 quarters and then get you fired if you cannot close them. So you want the right opportunity to work with.
Right. Well, let's jump more into the solution, but real quick, I did do some business here. If you're listening to this podcast on your favorite platform by audio, you're getting just about half the picture. So head over to B2B Marketing Mindset, check out the video feed, and there's a whole lot more information. And by the way, this thing is brought to you by the Agency Founders Network. So that's a private online community of sales and marketing founders who basically people that are selling their knowledge, selling their expertise. It's a place to connect, grow, partner with people who are walking in your shoes, right? Because running a business is a very lonely job. I know, I'm very lonely. So if you want to talk, I just need someone to talk to, really. But you can join for free right now, no credit card required, agencyfoundersnetwork.com. So I hope you'll check that out there, experts. So back with our guest, Michael. Oh, don't you just love that? I have to interrupt this thing and do the business, right? Um, so,
Shameless, plug. So,
hey, absolutely. We can't do the podcast without our sponsors. So, and I did notice, so I want people to go to SellMeThisPen.ai and go. I think it's right on the home page. You can scroll down, and Michael won't like this because it's an old video. We're going to update that. Um, but Saul was a little too cooperative, I think. And you
mhm.
were very hesitant, and I want you to redo that because I think that the guy that I'm talking to now that was like 2 or 3 years ago, right? So
Yeah,
yeah,
that was the first video we actually, released.
isn't it hard to get in front of a camera and like do your thing?
Very,
I'll
very, very
introduce you
hard.
to a guy that helps people be comfortable in front of the camera. Now you're a performer though, so you have an advantage. But let's talk about the platform. So it's not just AI role playing. There's more to it than this. You're going to be the best guy to describe it. So I'm going to throw it over
Sure.
to you. So tell us about the solution, who it's for, how it works.
Yeah, happy to. Look, I'm going to use your example as a reference. You just role play and you self-coach yourself and also ask for my feedback. In real life scenario, when do you see your managers actually sitting with you and giving you one-on-one, coaching without any judgment, and also in real time? That was real time. We just role played. You self-diagnosed yourself. Hey, it could be maybe my tone of voice, and what do you think? I give some feedback about the good, and
That's because you were
that will.
so nice. You were so nice to me. You're like, I don't think you can
I
improve
was
that. I'm like,
honest.
yeah, I can. Yeah, I can.
I was
But
honest.
you're right. And I've never had a manager, right? So
Yeah,
that's a great insight. I don't know if I would have thought of that. But anyway, go ahead.
absolutely. So look, another problem is that the feedback is not real time. So you have to wait 1 week. You most probably will forget about that scenario. Maybe you had a conversation, good or bad, with a client. And typically, what companies do is they use call recording tools. Let's record these conversations and then pick a call. Because just imagine this is a real life scenario. I have this client that have managers with 15 reps to manage. So every one-on-one will take about like 45 minutes, and managers need to prepare 30 to 40 minutes picking one call out of, let's say, 20, 30 calls that their reps actually run during the week. So not only is time consuming, it's very biased because maybe the call I pick or the one that I ask my rep to send over for me to evaluate, maybe it's not the best call, or maybe it's actually his or her best call, and they just send it over because it feels better just to get some positive feedback. So you lose the opportunity to look at their performance as a whole and be very, subjective about just one call that maybe you get a chance to give some good feedback. So we are trying to solve that problem at scale. So now what we can do is we analyze the entire calls for entire team members, and based on their individual strengths and weaknesses, we give them feedback the way they want. So the platform has this functionality for one-on-one coaching. So after each real conversation with clients or even role plays, coach comes and asks a question. Hey, how do you like to run your coaching session? Do you want to go for full-fledged coaching, or do you want me to give you some quick feedback, or do you want to role play the same scenario? So this way, reps have the option to choose how they want to run this session because it's all about them. The biggest problem is even sales leaders, those managers, sometimes they don't even know how to coach. They were high performing reps who got promoted to the leadership seat, and nobody actually took care of them. They never got a formal training to be the coach. So we solved that problem as well. And also we help with performance. So we help reps in real time. So when I'm talking to you right now, just imagine if I receive an objection, we can surface a relevant rebuttal on the spot. Not to teach reps something, but just to help them gain that confidence again. That's okay, it's just an objection. These are the things you can say if you're selling, for example, against this competitor. And also, we help them with some non-revenue tasks. We take their notes, we update their CRM so they can focus on conversations when they're with clients. And after that, instead of wasting time on admin work, they can focus on learning and getting better.
That's where my mind went right away was if I'm two things. I think you're absolutely right how high-performing salespeople often find themselves in management positions, two completely different skills. And so that creates a lot of train wrecking going on, I think. I don't think it's fair to the salespeople either. But then even the good managers really pressed for time, right? I think this might be able to really free up a lot of their time. And I think that's a huge value, right? But you mentioned, because I was going to ask you about the debriefing after and how the system does that, but you already answered that, so that's fantastic. Um, you know, I think that I'm still a skeptic. I'm part of me, and I wonder if I don't think I'm alone in this. I'm sick of hearing about AI. Just AI this and AI that and AI blah blah blah, and I just want to go live on an island somewhere and drink out of an old hubcap I found on the beach. But this is a clever use of AI, and I think you're going to see more and more of this. And the better that you can make that experience, and the more adaptable and the better it can learn, I think there's a competitive advantage in that. And I also like the way that you have a very focused business model. You're not trying to do a million different things. You're doing these couple of things really well. Um, and I would love to, I never do this, but I would love to try your solution for a few weeks and then have you back on and talk about my experience if you're willing to do that.
I'd love to. Yeah, absolutely, man. Yeah,
Because
love to hear your feedback.
I'm coming at it from a place of, I think, I don't know, maybe some of my friends and my coaches will argue against it, but I think I'm coming from a place of pretty deep knowledge. And so I'd really love to test it. I like to push it, like just see what happens, right? And maybe you can, in the last few minutes here, about objections. They tend to teach us to not try to handle objections, but to try to. One of the things we do is we're going to kind of know what the objections are going to be before we even talk to you, right? And so we'll introduce those ourselves. Hey, Michael, what happens if this XYZ, right? But I'm not sure that's the right approach all the time. Like sometimes you're going to have to answer that objection, because if you don't, you're going to seem evasive, right? What are your thoughts on that about objections and either handling them or just doing such a great job that they don't come up in the first place? I don't know if the latter is realistic.
I would say, look, objections are two types. Either they're real concerns, because maybe someone just got burned using another solution, or they really have genuine concerns that they need to hear your perspective on, right? Or they're just brush offs. And we both know it. Like when you, for example, cold call someone, typically it's a brush off. Hey, send me an email, or look, I'm walking to a meeting. The way I typically try to prevent some of these brush offs, by, for example, I don't do many cold calls these days as well, because we are lucky, I guess. But at some point, I'm gonna get back to it. But I try to always say, look, hey, I know you're walking to a meeting. Then I ask for that permission, because they kind of laugh at it and they're like, okay, the guy knows, so I better not to go in that direction. But when it comes to discovery conversations, I typically like to do this, and I learned this from Jolt Effect. It's a good book. It talks about like how to de-risking, some of these decisions for your buyers. So instead of like trying to shove all the solutions and make a big project and try to, get all the decision makers on the call right away, just tell them what good and bad, and try to make it low scale effort to just get in. That's how I sell right now, and it works pretty well for us. So for example, some of the problems that I know, because we work with different clients, I bring it up right away. So look, we talk about the good and you got excited about the platform, but let me tell you about some of the challenges we might face together. One is adoption might be an issue if you have cultural problems. If your sales managers don't help with reinforcing, we're gonna have a problem. Let's have this conversation right now. Maybe your company needs to go through change management before bringing another shiny object. Another thing is when I hear, for example, they have people problem. So this is a real case scenario. I'm working directly and very closely with the head of sales, one of my best clients, and I met him in person actually during my travels in Latin America just 2 months ago. And we sat down and we looked at all their seller personas, and we realized that these guys are offering more complex solutions right now, and the sellers they're hiring are not equipped with, selling those solutions. So we either have to upskill them, or we have to look elsewhere to, bring different talent from a top of funnel perspective from day one that we decide to target, certain sellers. So you know what I'm trying to say? Sometimes bringing this issue and say, hey, this is not about the tech you're looking at right now. Let's look at your company and how things actually work. And these are the challenges we notice with companies similar to you. And let's now see if we can actually even fix them together.
Yeah, I love that. And if you get this stuff right, here's what you'll hear. The prospect will say, can you teach us what you just did? And that always tells me that I'm running on all cylinders. Well, listen, man, I appreciate you being on the program. I always learn a lot. Like, I always think that my job here is to really learn from everybody. So now I'm in debt to you. I know a lot more about this now, and I'm dying to try it and play with it. And I know we'll talk again. And if you've made it this far in the pod, we do it every week. We do it at 11 o'clock Central Time, and it's live on LinkedIn. It's on YouTube Live. It's on b2bmarketingmindset.com, and it is on everywhere fine podcasts are consumed. So, Michael, thank you, man. It's been awesome. If you want to just stand by, we'll wrap this up, and just hang on the line here.
My pleasure.
Great stuff, man. That's and people can find you at SellMeThisPen.ai or on LinkedIn. So LinkedIn a good place? All right.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Cool, man. Nice. I appreciate you. Good stuff.
I appreciate you. Thank you.
Over and out.
You've been listening to the B2B Marketing Mindset. Add to the conversation by commenting, sharing, and liking. And don't forget to subscribe and check out the links in the comments. Learn more at b2bmarketingmindset.com.